I'd like to invite next Gisela Méndez. And I know it's not always easy. You know, we have challenges. And Gisela was inside the government. She was the former Secretary of Mobility of the state of Colima, now an independent consultant, and for valid reasons why she's an independent consultant. I'd like you to hear her story of the challenges that she faced when you sometimes try to make change happen. Over to you, Gisela.
Thank you very much. Okay. So thank you very much. This is the first time that I'm going to talk a little bit, not a lot about mobility and technical stuff and cycling and everything, but I hope that I can bring some perspective about how women face the challenge of mobilizing other women. So as they said, I was Minister of Mobility in the state of Colima. Colima is a very small state, the west coast in Mexico City. It was the first time that the government had and decided to have a mobility secretary or a mobility minister, and I was in charge of bringing this institution back to life, to construct it, to define the laws and regulations, and to decide where the mobility policy was going to go. In Mexico, for those who don't know, but I know that you're going to relate to that, public transport is a power play, it's not a public service. Because in Mexico, 88% of the public transport is run by this model. There is one man, one bus. So we don't have these companies, we don't have these regulations. Public transport is about how we negotiate between all those individuals that hold the transport sector in their hands, with no taxes, no investment, no social access for workers, a lot of constraints. So transport and getting into the transport sector as an authority means to fight corruption and a system that maintains power for those that they were given the privilege to do that. Transport sector in Mexico is also a male thing. 50 million Mexicans we move in transport systems. In Mexico, it's half of the population. Women travel more by public transport and walking and cycling than men. And 7 out of 10 women, they say they have suffered sexual harassment in women. And I was the only women's secretary of mobility in the entire Mexico at the top level. And I think now that I'm gone, I think there's no one left. Well, there's another other indicators. Only 12% of transport in Mexico you can integrate or have a negotiation as a company thing. Maybe here in Europe you have a lot of those, but in Mexico and Latin America it's kind of difficult. Only 2% of the people that work in transport are women, and those are especially related only to administrative activities, and that gives a lot of male perspective on how the transport should work. Transport also is a very violent sector. When the state decided to be out of transport, given these numbers, transport operators become the authority. And when you try to regulate this, you're gonna take away some of that power or regulate some of that power. You're dealing with a very violent sector as well. But I'm not gonna talk about what we did in terms of technical things, financial, and cyclists. I'm gonna talk about 7 things that we did, especially to help other women change the way they were treated in transport. The first thing was someone back in the 90s decided that women could not hold the transit or transport permits for their own. Because they said, listen, women, they don't drive, so even if they purchase the permit, they're not gonna have the title under your name. So you have to get a man to sign the contract for you. And even if women have that power and that money to get those permits to support their families, the people that was in charge of the minister decided that they were not going to be able to put their name on the list. And we saw that because as I arrived in the office, a lot of women came to me and said, okay, if you're a woman, then you're gonna understand what I've been through. So they told me the story, and we tried to reach out and change the way that we interpreted the law. It's not because the law said that women were not allowed, it's because the interpretation of the law make that happen. Another thing was we made highly increased awareness over sexual assault in public transport. I know that it's not a good picture because it's from a video from a security camera, but that happened while I was in office. That is a woman that jumped out of a taxi because she felt threatened by the taxi driver. And that, if a woman was in the office, that would be seen like, something happened, what did she did, why she was alone in the taxi. And what happened was we established very hard measures to punish those kind of behaviors. And among the drivers were very popular to say, it's better if you don't do that because the secretary, Gisela, is going to take away your license. And that was a good thing, at least for awareness. Another thing that we did was establish orange seats in transport. It's not because they were only for women, it's because we wanted to send a message saying, women, we don't want to be arrested, sexually assaulted, and in transport. It's not because those seats were only for women, because of the orange is a color that the UN uses to eradicate sexual assault in transport. We use that color to send a message in every bus that we have in Colima. And I put that picture there because I was taking care of other things. Then my male co-workers decided that the seats were going to go one seat orange and another not orange, and one seat orange. So when I saw that, I said, why did you do that? Oh, it's because so they can be mixed. So so I realized that men do not understand how we feel and why we want those things especially together, and I put that. When we first launched this and the internet, with this picture, not this one, the one with the seats very well painted, went viral, and men and women started to complain about how can we ask for more privilege in public transport. And it was bad, but at the same thing was good because we started a conversation about sexual harassment in transport, and that was a good thing. And now almost 100% of the entire bus fleet at the state has that kind of policy. Another thing that we do is, in Mexico, the permits to drive a taxi are a political exchange. So there's no procedure to get that. If you know the governor and the governor likes you, they give you that. If you support the campaign, maybe they give you 10 in change for the support. And we changed the entire process of that. Did create some problems. But what we did for women was, if you want to get a taxi permit, you not only don't have to hold criminal background that was already in the procedure, but you cannot have any cultural measures or preventing measures if you have a domestic violence thing. And that was strange because it makes the security minister to review their procedures as well in order to see if they hold these procedures correctly for us to have those backgrounds as well. For taxi drivers and bus drivers, we integrated gender violence awareness as well. And in the following years, they were asking to give or to have more of that, because it was the first time that they realized what women feel, what women say and meant when we say violence. Violence is not just someone that hits you. Violence is a lot more than that. And I know that some extremely feminists maybe won't agree with this, but another thing that we did was allowing transgender people to change their names on their license permits. In my state, we don't have the legal procedures for a woman or a man to change their gender. They have to go all the way to Mexico City. But they have, and they bring their legal status back. And there were a lot of troubles in our own offices to allow them to change that. And you know, when you have your name changed, your identity is so important. And we did that. This is a transgender woman and a transgender man, that when she did that, it went in with, for the news, went almost national. So we had a lot of transgender people coming in the following weeks just to do that. So I read this on Facebook. Equality feels like oppression when you are used to privilege. And what happened is that all these small changes trigger a lot of violence against those who are implementing them. For me, meant well, violent speeches, physical violence, threats against myself, against my family, taxi drivers that like me. They used to tell me that they were paid by their partners to injure me while I was driving my bicycle, just to send a message that I was doing something that they were not agree on that. And when you live in a society that is very machista, exercising violence against women is so easy, because we need to accept that, and we do not need to accept that. What I did was hold that and try to make more changes, maybe more vocal about it. When I had a physical injury, especially in a special procedure that we have, someone tried to really attack me physically, I went to the government and talked to him and said, this is going out of proportions. I don't know if we know the amount of interest that we are moving, and if we are able to put up with that. I know I can't. I'm asking if you are gonna do that, because I can do it, but if you don't do that, there's no sense that I'm still here. The real answer, his real answer, I got it like a year later, when he couldn't, and I decided to leave. Because it's one thing that you get all that pressure on your shoulders, but another one that your team starts getting that pressure, and you won't have that support from the system to do that. So I decided to leave, and when I leave, in my city, you can leave, you have two choices. Either you go quietly, and you say, I couldn't, and I go, and then I leave the policies for others to implement, or you go and say something about it. Not pointing fingers or saying something, but you have to say something. Because I knew that there were a lot of women that were counting on me, on being there to get some justice on their own processes. So I did. I did it very, not loud enough, but a little bit. And inside my city, nothing happened. They read my resignation and said, well, okay, ciao. But one thing is in my city, another thing is in the city center, where feminism and violence against women is talked a lot more. And outside my state, it made a lot of noise, so much that went national. And we were in the main news TV show in Mexico saying, how can this be possible, that these women have to leave because there's violence there? That is when the state got attention. Not when I present the demands at the Justice Department twice, not when I spoke with my coworkers, not when I spoke in the press in my city. It was when national, when they start getting to know this. And there's two different reactions that you get to that. First, a lot of women that said, I cannot believe that you say that. And I want to do that as well because that happened to me in this way, and this happened to me in that way. And the other reaction was a lot of men or women or people that were not directly in my statement felt so offended that I speak up that the violence increased against my family. So I think when you take these kind of positions, you know that you're going to change the world and you're going to change the way things are. These things are going to happen. And I think that women, we were born with biologic design to support change and to make change because our bodies change since we are born. And we're going to keep changing that. But that is not enough. You need more women beside you, in front of you, and with you. Because if not, this is very difficult to understand the war and the inequalities and the things that we need to change and do that together. A lot of that price that you know you have to pay, I know that we women, we are willing to pay. And I decided to pay that price as well because I knew that I have the social, the political, and maybe the economical capital to do that. But there's a lot of women that they don't have those capitals to spare. And it's a choice that you have to make. Either you go against your own governor or you stand by your women. And maybe I won't work again in my state. But I know that with that small action, you can empower other women to say, maybe that's it, that has to stop. So if I manage to accomplish that, besides a lot of things in transport and in technical things, I'll be grateful, and I'm grateful to you to hear this story.